Hey there, welcome to the Problem with Selling Coaching, 6 client losing mistakes that many coaches make. First, I'm going to show you why there are basically 2 categories of mistakes. I'm going to describe the 2 categories. I'm going to dive more deeply into each one and share with you the 6 mistakes that most of us make in coaching, especially when we're just starting out. So first off, the 2 types of mistakes. On the one hand, we have the mistake where we enroll someone who is not a right fit for our program. And the second kind of mistake is when we have a right fit person and we fail to enroll them. All right, so let's dive deeper into the first category. So there are basically, inside of this category of enrolling someone who's not a right fit, there are 4 scenarios that I commonly have experienced and that I see my clients experience. The first scenario is where someone is not a values match. And the problem with enrolling someone that's not a values match, especially if you have if you have a group coaching program like I do or a mastermind group, is that, and you've heard me say this before, one bad apple spoils the bunch. So actually there are 2 problems with this. The one bad apple spoils the bunch means that one client can kind of infect other clients if they're not a values match. And 2, even if you don't have a group program and you're just one-on-one, if someone's not a values match with you, it's going to be very difficult for you to coach them. Why is that? Well, because your values are what determine how you approach coaching. They're how you determine what strategies you recommend. They also determine how that person will receive your coaching. I'll give you an example. I once had a client who I really liked, and that client really liked me. They thought that I could support them with strategy, and they were not a values match in that we had a very completely different belief system, a spiritual belief system. So whereas this person's belief system was much more traditional, mine is much more woo-woo, much more new age, you could call it, right? And so we would have a mismatch because a lot of times we would come up with a situation where from my view, from my perspective and my belief system, I felt like this person could try a solution, for example, of like maybe releasing the outcome, detaching from the outcome. But from their world, the solution was to actually drive harder and further and to do it completely differently. So we had a completely different view of what was going on and what was the solution. Another time I had a client, similar story, similar difference in belief system. And every time I would do, like we would be in a community environment, doing our spiritual woo-woo stuff, this person felt really, really uncomfortable because it was out of alignment with their values. And so they couldn't get the full benefit of the experience. And I'm sure that they felt like maybe they didn't belong. So these are ways when you have a values mismatch, it can be really hard to lead somebody and to serve them fully. The second scenario I've seen is when someone is not mentally stable, when they actually have so many problems that really what they need is either a doctor or medication or some sort of professional therapy or support that is beyond the scope of coaching. When someone is having these types of deeper problems that go beyond the scope of coaching, it can be really challenging to identify if that's the case, if they're a right fit for you. So in this case, it's delicate because you don't want to discriminate against people, but you also want to protect that person and protect your culture and your own experience of coaching. So this is just something to watch out for. If you notice like signs of mental illness or instability, or maybe even, ask the person, hey, you mentioned that been really depressed in the past. How depressed were you? How deep did that go? Do you feel like you're in danger of having that experience again? Are you worried about that? Do you have support in place to support you with that should that happen again, right? Like you can also enroll somebody and also just make sure that they have the support that they need so that it's not going to get in the way. The third one of the most common issues I see is enrolling someone who's not a fit because they're not committed enough. They're not going to show up. This is why I do the sales process the way I do it. And I'll take a moment here to invite you to check out. I did my sales as service little mini course that you can watch. It's a 4-part series on how to enroll effectively. And I address this piece in there multiple times, which is how to make sure that if someone's not committed, that they either get committed or that they're committed at the outset and that they're going to really show up fully. Somebody who enrolls in your program, pays you money, and then doesn't fully participate is very likely, obviously, not going to get the results. And oftentimes they're going to resent you for it. And then finally, just enrolling someone who's coming from a very energy poor state. When someone is in an energy poor state, it's really not a great time to get them to enroll in personal transformation. This is my opinion. There's a lot of people out there, including probably Tony Robbins, who would disagree with me. But in my opinion, I personally want the experience of empowered, energy-rich clients. And when people enroll from a disempowered, energy-poor state, my experience has been that they're looking for a magic bullet. They're looking for a hero. They're looking for someone, a savior, and I don't want to be that person. I know from personal experience that when I step into that role, I always regret it later. I want empowered clients who are ready, who are willing, who are able, and who are committed. So now let's talk about the category 2 of mistakes. When you fail to enroll someone that you could have enrolled and maybe should have enrolled because they would have been a fabulous fit. There are probably several reasons that could cause this to happen, but in my experience, I've seen 2 come up again and again. The first is failing to move through an objection effectively. Meaning you have a great conversation, they're a great fit, you walk through the whole sales as service structure perfectly, and then you get to the end and they share with you their objection. I don't have the time, I don't have the money, whatever that objection is, and you back off. You buy into their story, despite the fact that everything else was great. Everything else was a congruent fit. They're 20 out of 20 committed or 10 out of 10 committed, right? All the things are lining up, but they have this objection or these 2 or 3 objections, and you basically let the objections derail you. That's one scenario where, I would say that's the saddest scenario because you're right there. And personally, I believe that objections are an opportunity to go deeper. And if you want to learn more about that, I talk about that specifically in my Sales as Service video 2 in that mini course. And so I have an example of that. My very first retreat client, Leanne Webster, when we got on the phone 8 years ago to do our strategy session, our sales call, everything was incredible. And we got to the end of that call and I laid out the number and I was like, all right, let's do this. And she said, I just don't have the money. If I had backed off, if I hadn't gone deeper, if I hadn't worked through that objection with her, I wouldn't have her as a client today. We're 8 years later, she's still in my program. And so the key is to learn how to go deeper with objections and how to use the objections in order to create even more rapport, even more trust, and actually support that person into saying yes. Now, if you want to hear the whole story about what happened with Leanne, you're going to have to watch that mini course. And I actually don't remember which video it was in. I'm going to say it's probably number 2 or number 3 of that series. And then finally, the mistake, probably one of the most common mistakes that I see coaches making is coaching on the sales call. So in my structure, I very often just remind people, do not coach on the call. There's one time in that sales process that it's appropriate or effective for you to share insights and ideas, and that's during the insights and ideas phase of the call. But even when you're sharing insights and ideas, I'm not suggesting that you coach people in order to support them in actually implementing them on the spot or right after the call or without you. Not because I'm one of these people that's like, oh, save it, they haven't paid for you yet, save it for later, but truly because what people receive on that call for free, it's just good advice. It's just good advice, and they can get good advice everywhere. Really, the power of coaching comes from the transformation process that you take people through, and you haven't taken them through enough of that process. You haven't built enough trust. You haven't created enough value to really help them make a transformation just from this 45-minute call. You can help them have a breakthrough. You can help them have an aha moment, have an insight. There's all sorts of amazing things that can happen on a sales call, valuable things, and that's what I advocate. And they're not going to have the transformation right there in 45 minutes. The goal is to share with them the insights so that you can then use those insights to enroll them and then support them in the coaching journey with you. Don't do the coaching on the sales call. Save it for later and maybe even tell them, I'm trying to hold myself back from coaching you on this call because I see so much opportunity. And what I know for sure is that my program will serve you the best. That if we do this over the course of X number of months or X number of days or weeks or whatever, then we can get this outcome together. I hope that this has been helpful for you, this 6 mistakes that I commonly see. And if you're looking for some support, some mentorship, some guidance on how to grow your coaching business, make it more successful, more joyful, more prosperous, let's connect. You can find me at superstaractivator.com/go.